All right, all right, all right. Let's do this, y'all. Who wants to ask the first question? And while we're doing this, I'm going to do a 10-minute painting. This is my first one. I'm trying to get it out of the way today. Ask away.
I have a question.
Go for it.
I really like illustration, especially like John Grello's stuff. I've been wondering how hard it is to like get into that field and if there's like, good possibilities and stuff like that.
Let me put a hypothetical to you. Yeah. Let's say it's really hard.
Yep.
Are you still interested?
I mean, I've been doing this for so long that yeah. I'm
Okay.
like, well, I'm not gonna go back now.
Yeah. Well, let me kind of frame it again. Like, that's my least favorite barrier. That something may be difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. And for obvious reasons, right? Like, there's a lot of things that are difficult, and to say that concept art is less difficult is an understatement. It's not really. It's hard too. And I always encourage people to do what they want to do, because even if let's say a concept artist can make twice as much, maybe 3 times as much as an illustrator could ever make, right? Is that what merits you pursuing that career versus what you've always been more interested in? It doesn't, right? Like you'd rather just be doing what you're interested in, correct? And I think a lot of this principle that success equals more money, and I can tell you guys from experience, it's not true at all. To give you an example, when I was working on this film, I was making about $4,000 a week. That's a lot. Yeah. And I hated it. I hated the job. I didn't like what I was doing. I felt like my work was getting worse, and I felt like I was underappreciated. It was a lot of stuff, right? And so then, so then I just basically was kind of like, okay, clearly making more money doesn't make me any happier, right? And then so I started shifting my goals around what I wanted to do and what I love to do. Okay. And then once I started doing that, that's when I started getting happier. And so this kind of philosophy that I try to get you guys to understand is not like me trying to be happy-go-friendly type of edit, like, chase your dreams, follow your heart type of like overly subjective kind of point of view. Like, no, it's actually practical, my point of view about following your heart and chasing your dreams. I said do things that are in reason. Like being an illustrator is reasonable. People still need illustrations. Okay, they still exist. Look at like the Baby Driver. There's like that movie poster was done by an illustrator. It was nice. It was dope.
Oh yeah, I've seen a lot of new like illustrated posters that are coming out.
Yeah, but let's then look at where it really lives. Like illustrations live a lot. A lot of them live in they live in what you call it?
Comics.
Comics. Yeah, that's a good one. But what else was there? The one that's really blooming. Board games.
Oh yeah.
Board games and card games, both digital and analog. Obviously, analog, they need it, right? And obviously, like card games for what you call it, video games is starting to become a big thing. I think recently Steam just announced a card game. Was their new IP that they're working on? It was wildly hated. Then that announcement, people were fucking pissed. For I guess good reason, because like or for some rational reason, I guess, because everyone was looking forward to like Half-Life 3 or Portal 3 or something like that. So I get it, I get it, but like, I mean, come on, they can let them make what they want to make. But some of the arguments I found that were probably more of the reason why they're probably doing it, because people feel like they're just doing it to make more money. They're trying to live off of that Hearthstone money. And they see like companies like Witcher also do the same thing. They have like their own card game. So like people are thinking that it's a cash grab, like they're just trying to ride that wave. But I mean, like, why can't they? Like, what's wrong with them trying to make a card game? But I see, you can see I'm flip flopping on this. But at the same time, I get what their audience is. It's the curse of being super successful. right? There was a time where um, George Lucas made a claim that he wished he never made Star Wars because it was so popular, so successful that anytime he tried to do anything else, people were like, "Yeah, shut up, get back to making Star Wars stuff." You know?
I mean, he could have made like more stuff. I feel like,
Oh, he did. He tried,
yeah,
and people
yeah,
bashed him every time he tried.
yeah.
And so it's just true. He just tried, and no one let him. Or people let him, but just nobody liked it, or maybe there's overwhelmingly disliked it on purpose. Some warranted dislike, but others I don't think did. And so, getting back to kind of to you though, do you
Hmm.
see kind of the point I'm making is that uh, anything you really want to do that has any value is going to be challenging.
Hmm.
Okay, so try to like get that out of your mind. Okay, that like is it harder or easier? Like it's going to be harder, and you're going to hear people complain that it's really hard to do illustration and it's really challenging. But then what about the people who do illustrations? And
Hmm.
what about the companies who need illustrators? You know,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
just exists. There's just a need for it always.
part of what pushed me was I started doing like freelance work, and a lot of it was just illustration. And I'm like here looking for like a studio job as a concept artist, loving what I'm doing as a freelancer. So
Yeah, see, so you're kind of like just right there, you're already kind of waking up to the idea like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Am I
yeah.
just following the strides of what people tell me to do?
Hmm.
And with that being said, if you want to start pursuing illustrations for your homework instead of character concepts, you can
Hmm.
do that. You can make that change today. Okay. But you have to
Hmm.
do it today because we don't have time to dick around. All right. So
Yep.
if you still want to, if you feel like, oh, I just want to complete these concepts and just kind of build that into my world of skill for illustration, that's a fair approach too, right?
Well, one thing is I'm taking a comic book class in September, and I thought I could
Uh,
use the characters I'm in here for the like comic that we're doing. It's
Perfect.
like a 5-page comic in a month.
Yeah. So as long as your eye is on the prize, like obviously learning good character design is not going to make you a worse illustrator. Like they're in the
Yeah.
same wheelhouse, right? It's not like I'm going to learn how to change someone's toilet
Yeah.
and somehow find a way to make that work with illustration. Which I'm
Mm.
sure there could be some really good illustrations to be had. But you get what I'm saying? Like that's a bit of a stretch versus
Yeah.
like what you're trying to do now. This is obviously a good trajectory. So it's up to you though. I'm saying like I'm giving you a chance to like if you want to like turn your characters into illustrations, we can do that. Okay.
All right.
What you'll need to do is convert the homework assignment that I may have gave you, whatever it was, and instead of doing that, do 10 thumbnails for illustration.
All right. I'll can
Okay.
I like think about it and message you?
Yeah. So you answer this question by
Yeah.
submitting the homework. You don't have to ask me or you'd send me
Okay.
whatever.
Okay. Cool.
You just next class you submit me the homework and I'll just assume that's your choice and then we'll
Okay.
stay on task because then if you change your mind I'll be like, see, you're a flip flopper, and I'll start
Yeah.
critiquing you on that because that's not ideal either. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll give you a chance to flip flop over the weekend. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Like nothing that you've done up to this point would be a waste either. I'm sure you've learned things and it was helpful. And it's only going to help you get better anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
anything you may pursue moving forward is again just only going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so, well, I have a statement first of all.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't know, you probably don't remember me, but
I probably don't. I apologize if I don't.
2 years ago, I was at CTN Expo and I bought your book, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, and you were gonna sign it for me, but you told me to wait like 10 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and because you had to go and do something and then come back, and I was so like I was art starstruck that I was too nervous to stay for 10 minutes. And so I,
Oh,
I never saw you.
well, are you local?
No, I'm in Maryland.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Just walk over. You'll be fine.
I know, right?
um, so this was my 10-minute sketch. Let me do another one.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, just to that statement. if there is ever an instance where you're around me again, of course I'll sign it, man. No big deal. And there's no reason to be starstruck.
No, not anymore. I just,
Okay,
you
good.
know.
Yeah, I get it, man. It's like you hear somebody online a lot, or you see their stuff a lot, and you're just like, you have this.
No, that whole trip was really hard because I saw everybody who I ever followed like
Oh,
online
I see.
there. And I got there, like I went, that was my first trip ever I took by myself. And I went in there and I saw like everybody's stuff and everybody I recognized and everybody's art was just better than mine. And I literally felt like, whoa, I don't belong here. I literally turned around and walked out and had to go like sit down for an hour because I was like, I need to calm down.
Mm.
And I calmed down and I worked up the courage to go back in and like speak to some people. I was like crazy nervous and it wasn't coherent, but I spoke, so I was proud of myself. But that was
Well, I'm proud of you too.
so that was 2 years ago. That was whatever. But I guess my question, like, so at CTN, I remember that was the first time I'd ever seen Jake Parker in person before.
Oh
And
yeah, cool.
yeah, and I, you know, I was listening to him talk, and I remember he had stated he had like 5 kids, and like you have a bunch of kids too, and like you guys are successful doing this, and so I'm
Yeah.
just
So the trick is to have kids. You're right.
I know.
So
So and
get busy.
blew my
Start making
mind. I'm
kids.
like, y'all got kids, and like you able to pay for your kids to like live, and then but also yourself. So like, how did you get like? I guess I know I've listened to a bunch of your videos and
Uh-huh.
a bunch of people's videos about how they got started, but just like, how did you get started getting gigs, like and like consistent gigs?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So that's that question is the wrong question to ask.
Okay.
Okay. No, it's fine. I'm going to tell you why. Okay. So you ask it because you just don't know. You're naive, right?
Yeah.
That's just a fact, right? Like I was very much too. And so when you hear these pros tell you that it just took a long time and it was really hard work, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's because there was never a moment where like I was like, this is how you keep getting gigs, yo. Like I figured it out. I cracked the code. I'm just gonna keep this to myself until one day, a madam named Jocelyn, she's gonna she's gonna ask me this question, and when she does, I will have the perfect answer for her. You know. So this moment has finally arrived. I can finally lay down the advice that will help generations. And the reality is, I've given this advice. The real way to do this is to be really good and to expand your network.
Mm-hmm.
That I know it seems really general and it seems really broad, but it's the fact.
Yeah.
Okay? And there's no other way, because there's all kinds of scenarios and examples and variation, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
counter other examples and variation and so forth and so on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the example I gave with Marko Djurdjevic and Shadi Safadi, right? Like they
Mm-hmm.
both gave like really terrible advice and also really good advice, you know?
Yeah.
So like when people ask me this type of question, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give you potential contradicting advice. So there's the theory of evolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there within the theory of evolution, there's an argument of, is there or can there be a better theory to describe the changes of life and over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Darwinism's natural selection of evolution basically is the most strongest and probably the most foolproof, enough that people believe, some of the people who are advocates of evolution believe that there is no other way in our universe to evolve, right?
Mm-hmm.
For instance, natural selection can explain eyeballs, right? Like, because if you keep opening your eyeballs a lot, doesn't make your eyeballs better, doesn't improve your vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus
Yeah.
like a muscle.
Right.
So evolution can explain why an eyeball can be an eyeball, right? Because it's passed down through generation, mutation after mutation, and the best mutation stays. Get it?
Mm-hmm.
And so that explains that. Okay. And so that's why it's really good to kind of focus on that as one of the most staple or most fundamental ideas around evolution, because it's the most foolproof. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I'm trying to say with this advice, is like, this is the most foolproof, that like there is no case, at least I can think of, where someone had really, really terrible work and really poor networking and got amazing jobs.
Yeah.
Right. And neither or work exists either. Like, if let's say if you had someone that had really good work but never networked, it's very, very, very rare or very hard to find somebody that will have an amazing job. And vice versa, someone who networks really a lot but doesn't,
Have great work.
doesn't have great work, has a hard time. But see, the thing is, it still works though. If you network and just have mediocre work, it can get you jobs. And if you have good work and nobody knows about it, but somebody happens to stumble upon you, you can get jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's having an absence of both, having absence of no like bad work and having no network will not get you jobs. Like I said, I can't find an example of that. We're like, hey, you know what? This guy or gal, they're going to be amazing in 5 years. So let's just hire them now and just wait. No, that doesn't work. Nobody thinks that way, right?
Just wait.
Yeah, they hire people who have the work that they need today, not tomorrow, today. So if you're going to be objective with yourself, I'll stop the timer so I can just kind of be a little bit more profound. If you submit your work today to somebody, a client, ask yourself, is your work what they are actually looking for? There's no reason to guess this. Okay? People are really, like I said, naive. Like, they don't want to admit that the answer is so obvious. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So when you let's say you want to be an illustrator for League of Legends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like to do their splash screens. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what I have to do. Like, I don't know how far I should push my work. Then you're deliberately being intellectually dishonest with yourself.
Yeah.
Because you can just go look, and you can grab your work, you can put it next to this work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ask yourself a very serious and very honest question. Would I hire me to replace this artist or to work alongside this artist?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then start working towards this.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's really that simple, because if you submit work that was of this quality or different or even better, right? But at least the quality was there, they matched, like you have a good sense of lighting, form, anatomy, design, perspective, just like this artist does, and you submit it and they happen to have a opening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your chances are really high.
Yeah.
Because they'll be like, as soon as we bring Jocelyn in, she'll be ready to go. Right? There might be some things that they have to train you through, right? Like maybe the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the way that they go through art tests and gauging how to go through feedback and iteration. These things they might do differently, right? Everyone does these things differently. That's why I don't focus on that primarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
I try to train you guys to learn how to iterate, but some companies might not want you to iterate a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some companies might want you to only iterate. Some companies might never want you to finish a painting. They don't need you to. Some companies want all and everything to be finished, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to just say, just do this. So I just tell people, finish a painting, because it increases your range. Now you can do one if you needed to, and you can do sketches if you need to. You just depend on who's asking you.
Yeah. So I guess my question was just that, like I understand, like I do know that it is that simple, because otherwise cliches wouldn't exist if they didn't work, right? But I guess my question is that, like, before you were as good as you are now, like were you just working other jobs, or was the work slow? Like, how were you dealing with that time when you were like still, I know you're still learning now, but like when things were a little more frustrating in art because you weren't as good, or were you just not getting those jobs and just working other places?
So again, this question's not the right question.
Okay.
Okay. I like your responses back to. Okay.
No, that's fine.
Cool. Tight. So So here's the root of the problem with your questions.
Okay.
Why does it matter?
It's not necessarily, I'm just curious just for your experience.
No, don't worry. I'm gonna blow your mind a little bit. Like,
Okay.
why does it matter? What if I told you that it was really easy for me? What if I told you that it was really hard for me? What if I told you I worked not 10 jobs? What if I told you I didn't work any jobs? What would that change? And why would it change?
It wouldn't necessarily change anything. It would
Okay.
just
So then
change
why are you asking these questions? See,
just insight.
this is where it's gonna get real.
Okay.
Because you're distracting yourself. This is why. Because you want to believe that this leads somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want you don't want to fail at this. You're afraid of failure. You're afraid that it's not going to work out, right? And you want comfort to think that it's going to work out, and you want to hear people tell you that it's going to work out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why these questions form, because if I told you what I told you, it wouldn't change the fact that you still have to do something, right? If I gave you, I'm going to give you some examples of people. I'll give you some examples to give you that rounded idea of what I'm trying to get at. There's many different examples of many different people, okay? And I like to tell these stories because my whole idea with that is to stop you guys from being distracted, okay? It doesn't matter how old someone is. It doesn't matter how young they started. It doesn't matter how old they started. It doesn't matter if they worked a lot. It doesn't matter if they have 5 kids. It doesn't matter if they have no kids. None of that fucking matters to you. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's irrelevant. When a company is hiring a client, they're not like asking you, well, did you work a lot? Like, did you also take like 2 jobs to do this job? Or was it really, or did your parents pay for your college and you went to college on a free ride? Because that's important to us. Remember how I talked about meritocracy is like a real thing, right? Because when you submit your portfolio, they don't ask those questions. The better you are, the less questions they ask about your past, really, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying you can only truly control those 2 variables. So any other variable that you're focused on is a distraction. You understand me?
Yes.
It will feed you ideas that aren't actually productive. Do you understand me?
Yes.
And that's what I'm trying to make you like really, really see is that these questions are fine to ask, and I don't mind you asking. I get asked these questions all the time, obviously, right? But the answer I've come up with that I believe is the best answer to give is you need to keep the eye on the prize. You need to work on your work, and you got to go to these events. Like you said, you went to that event. What happened? You had a profound awakening, right?
Yeah.
That's important. You need to do that often. You need to have these profound awakenings all the time. You think you're the only person that had that profound awakening? No, of course not, right? That's why I suggest people go to events, not because it's just a great way to network. It's because it opens your worldview, and that makes you a better person and a better artist, right? It just does. Even if it was a negative experience, you learn from that every time. You understand me?
Yeah.
Because your circumstances are going to be different than mine, right? They're just going to be, and so you have to focus on the things that you can truly, truly control, and the things you can only control, really, truthfully, is how good your work is. Nobody can literally go to your house as of now, right? We'll see in Trump's America. Go to your house, take your Wacom pen, break it over your head, and say, "Stop following your dreams." If someone has done that to you, that's against the law, right? We can do something about that.
Yeah.
Like, there's no one literally in your home, like pushing you down, and there's no one like literally holding you back. You have access to my class. You had access to me. You were able to talk to me,
Yeah.
and that's great. And you took advantage of all that. That's awesome. You're on the right path, homie. But the problem is if you keep like, if you think, oh man, but I want to make sure, I'm telling you, you're sure. Don't worry about it. You have a high probability of success by doing those 2 things. I can't guarantee success come to you tomorrow. I can't guarantee it by a year. But when it starts coming to 2, even 3 years, my prediction, if you were consistently working and practicing and networking for about 3 years, my guess would be that your chances are really high if you haven't started working already.
Okay.
You understand? Because it's inevitable. You will become very skilled and you would have made a lot of friends. See, for me, the first jobs I've gotten were through pretty much primarily friends. My work was pretty garbage, right? But I wasn't able to keep consistent work until I was really good.
Yeah.
But the product of just painting all the time is you're just going to get good at it, right? So it was inevitable. You understand me?
Yeah.
And see, so when I tell you this, I tell you because it's just a fact, okay? Like you can rely on facts. You can trust them. You can ask yourself this question. 5 years ago, was your work better then or is it better now?
Better now.
So you don't even have to look at me. You can look at yourself, right? You've gotten literally better over years of practice, right?
Yes.
You don't have to look anywhere else. Just look at yourself. I can tell you right now, there was a time in your life, Jocelyn, you didn't know how to walk. You know that? I don't know you personally, but I bet you didn't know how to walk one time in your life. I promise. Unless you're like a super baby. You came right out, just started strutting. I don't know you. Maybe that's the case. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm positive that you weren't even able to hold your neck up right? Like all of us.
Yeah.
And do you see what I'm saying? Like time and practice works. But see the two factors that people get distracted by, they see all these other people. Like there was this artist in the previous class that was commenting on how they saw an artist do this like amazing painting, and they're amazing, and they're working for Riot and doing all this great stuff, and they're only like 23 years old, right? And my student was like so focused on that. It's like, oh man, I'm 23 and I have like barely got started, and like my work's like really awful, you know. And they were really focused on that, right?
Yeah.
And I explained to them, it's a distraction. Like, who cares? You think that someone being young is cause to why they're better than you? It's like, it has nothing to do with it. They put time in. Don't undermine their age. Don't undermine their skill because based on their age, right? They spent years training. You just didn't see it. And a good example of this is like the movie Rocky. Have you ever seen the first Rocky? Or just any movie with underdogs that win at the end? Yeah. Okay. All right. So in these types of movies, right? Like let's use Rocky because I use it all the time. In Rocky, right? Like Rocky Balboa, for the whole movie, it takes over a span of a few weeks in the first half of the movie, or like the first 2/3, all in a span of 2 weeks time, like that part of the movie, right? Like days go by, weeks go by, and then there's a moment where he has to train to fight Apollo Creed, and he has 6 months of training. So even though most of the movie, in terms of time frame, took a span of like 2 or 3 weeks, there's a 6-minute montage where he was training. That was 6 months. That was in a timeline of 6 months, but they condensed it to minutes because nobody wants to come back and watch the movie every day for 6 months to watch Rocky train, right? Because that'll be extremely boring.
Yeah.
That's why montages exist, because it's extremely boring to watch people train in the real time. Okay. And that's why you got to do it quickly, and you just put some good music behind it. You show them off like barely doing their thing, and then you have like the music kind of reinforce what's happening. Like, this person's training and they're trying their best and they're doing everything they can, you know. And you're just like, oh, dope, yes, you know. And then at the end of the 6-minute montage, like if they weren't able to like, you know, do the thing, now they're kicking some ass at doing that thing, and you're like, dope, you know. And then you go home and you're like, you pay for 6 minutes. You're like, why am I not amazing already? What the hell? You know? Because you need to train for 6 months, you know? And so whenever I hear those questions that you ask, I say it's the wrong question, because they are, you know, I think you already know the answers. You know what I mean? Like everything I just told you, especially the first stuff that I told you, Jocelyn, I think you agreed.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, you might have just been like, yeah, I already know that. So what's the problem? You know what I mean? And so it's distractions. That's what they are. Okay. Anytime you start thinking about other people in a way where it's not necessarily like motivating, right? Like like it's good to look at other examples as a product of what not to do and what you can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mind you to ask that question to other artists. I think you should, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you should also try to think of ways of being more poignant with your answers, right? Or questions, I mean. So like, think of it like this. This could have been a better question. Let's frame it like, well, the first question again was like, what was kind of like the hurdles, or what? Well, no, I'm sorry, that's the second question. The first question was like, how do you maintain consistent artwork, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you, I'm sorry, consistent jobs and getting
Yeah.
freelance, like how do you do that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
instead of asking that question, because the answer is pretty general, like I told you, quality of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And network, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know that, but you wanted more specifics, right? And I think that's fine. So you went into the, well, you know, what was your journey, whatever. Again, that's too general. So a better question, and I'm going to kind of give you this type of ammunition, right? A better question to ask is to focus on the things you know you need to improve on. Don't focus on broader scope problems. Focus on specific contextual problems. So for instance, you have lack of clarity in your work, right?
Mm-hmm.
A better question is, because you know you just need to have better quality and you need to network more. So a better question for the quality part would be focus on your immediate problems. AJ, what ways can you show me to have clearer work? And then I'll answer. Probably would have done a demo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you just do it, because that's going to fuel that first problem, which is quality. You don't got it yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then to ask a question focused on, let's say, the networking aspect of it, a good way of saying is like, okay, you know, when I go to these events, because I already know I should, so that's not even a question. Okay, I go to these events, right? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I feel afraid to talk to somebody, but I know I should. What's a good way to talk to them, right? That's a
Mm-hmm.
genuine question that will help. Again, I can give you feedback on that, right? I could say something along the lines of, everybody's a person, don't worry about that. You know, one way you should think about it is treat everybody equally, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
whether they're an art director or they're a student, because art directors can still be dicks, okay?
Yeah.
And then students can one day be art directors. Do you understand? So
Yeah.
just being consistently friendly to everybody is just a good idea. And if people treat you like dirt, regardless of their status, then fuck them. You know,
Yeah.
just because you're good at art doesn't give you a free pass of being an asshole, right?
Right.
And so, see, that's a good advice, right? You can be like, oh, okay, great, like I got that, and that kind of reconfirms what I believe. I just wasn't sure, but now I know, you know. And so
Mm-hmm.
maybe that will bring a little more bravery to you next time you go to these events. You understand?
Yeah.
But those two concepts you would have already understood and agreed with, and you would not be asking these broader questions anymore, right? Because
Yeah.
you know that you need quality work. The question is, right now, what specifically should you, what kind of advice you specifically need to get? Because you should know what's wrong with your work right now, and you should be asking other people to help you recognize solutions to those problems. Okay,
Okay.
and then that's a really good way of asking questions, right? Overall, and it helps you remove from illusions and distractions.
Okay.
All right, so let me give you the most fucking rugged story now. Okay, so you're asking about struggles and if there was any challenges. You know, I have my own struggles, right? I'm gonna give you the most rugged one that I've ever heard, and so that way you don't have to ask this question anymore. Okay, so because if unless you're at rock bottom, at like this person was, then maybe you can start asking that question again, see if there's anyone even more rock bottom. But I'm sure there always will be, right? So I'm going to give you the most rock bottom story that you can hold dear and just kind of cherish that and know that you got it okay. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can stop being distracted with this one problem. All right. So let me give it to you. Okay? I'm going to finish this painting that time. I still only have like a minute and a half. So I went to IFCC one year and I was talking with this artist and we were talking about the stuff. Like we were kind of like there's this inside joke amongst other professionals that, you know, like we know that all it took for us to get to where we are is just consistency, right? So we were just talking about that. We were just kind of commenting. He's like, yeah, like keep telling students this and they just don't get it. And I was like, yeah, man. He's like, yeah, dude, my struggle is like one of the hardest things I ever had, man. And like, if I can make it, then anyone can make it. And I was like, oh yeah, like what happened to you? Because I was curious. way he set it up made it super enticing. And so he started telling me, he said, you know, I was homeless. I lived in the streets. I'm an orphan, right? Like, so I don't have any family that I actually know, any biological family that I know of. So my like foster family like abandoned me, you know, when I was a teenager. And I just lived in the streets. I was a bum. And I just did like street art to make a living and just barely sustain life on the streets. And I was like, whoa, what the? And he's like, yeah, like I'm like, I was a for real bum. Like someone gave me bread and I was like, oh my God, this is a great day kind of thing. And I remember I tried to share it with another homeless person, and that homeless person stabbed me and then stole the bread, you know? And I'm like, that's some real life stuff, man. And he was like, yeah, dude. And he said, one day, like I was just drawing and some guy saw one of my drawings and he complimented on them and he said, this is actually really good. He's like, would you like to, uh, would you like to have like an opportunity to work at my company, right? And
Daddy, you're still teaching?
I am.
Guys, go wash your hands.
Wash your hands, Peter. And so obviously this artist was like, yeah, duh, you know. And so he gave him a chance. He said, you can do this art test and we'll see how you do. And so he did the art test. He killed it, right? Because, you know, he had nothing else to do other than fucking paint because he was homeless, right? And so he was really good and he did a great job and the guy was amazed. He came back and got the artwork and he's like, this is great. I'm going to show this to my team and whatever. So they ended up hiring him because of that, right? Great. Amazing, you know? And so when he got that job, right?
Mhm.
He went into the one of the producers, right? And he said to the producer, he's like, do you mind if I get like the first month's pay? You know? Like right now. And the guy was like, what? Why, if you don't mind me asking? Right? Like the first day, imagine the first day of work, you say, hey, you know, thanks for the opportunity. Can I get paid already? Right?
Mhm.
And, you know, obviously the producer's already kind of skeptical. and so when his response to this producer was like, yeah, because I live on the streets right now, I'm homeless. And I would like to, you know, get like a hotel or something and take a shower and get some food. And the producer obviously was like, yeah, what the, let's fix this. You know, and then so the team worked together to help him and bring him out of that. And it was great. It's a good story. But do you see, like, so now how do you react to that, right? How then, if I tell you my version of the story, could my story feel like a real struggle? You know, I never lived on the streets, man. I never got stabbed for bread, you know?
Yeah.
And he makes no illusion that he was very lucky. Like that guy would have never came by and saw his potential, right?
Yeah.
Like he would just probably be on the streets or maybe even dead or addicted to drugs, right? Or
Yes.
whatever stereotype homeless thing like homeless people do, right? Or what is the natural steps of regression that happen to people who are homeless, right? He was lucky. Okay. And he makes no allusion to that, like I said. Okay. And when I heard that story, I said, yeah, you know, I've been telling people my struggles and people have been inspired by that. Like, do you mind if I use yours? Because yours is way better. And he says, yes, of course, you can always share it. And that's what I do. And that person now, he goes by Sickbrush, Christian Sickbrush. If you just type in Christian Sickbrush, you can find his DeviantArt art station.
Mhm.
But currently, he's the art director at Ubisoft.
Wow.
So, context, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
You see that, like, who cares what my struggle is, right?
Yeah.
What's yours? Focus on yours. Focus on what your everyday progression is going to be, so that one day you can tell people about your struggles because they're going to be different, right, than mine and
Mhm.
Christians and the next artist, right?
Yeah.
But one thing will be universally true about all of us is that we were consistently working to have better work and that we expanded our network. He unintentionally expanded his network from just having his work out in front of people. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Those
Yeah.
are the only two things, because if he didn't show his artwork, you know what I mean? he wouldn't have got recognized. Do you see how that works?
Yes.
Those are the two consistent variables that I've seen across the board. I've met thousands and hundreds of artists. All right. This is pretty much consistent with everybody I've ever met. Okay. So there's no reason why you can't either. You know what I mean? That's kind of the moral of the story.
Yeah.
All right. So hopefully you can see the value of that story, and hopefully you can see kind of like, okay, let's focus on every day by day, you know, and let's focus on my weakness of today, not my weaknesses of the future. Let's focus on my failures of today, not my failures of the future. There's no way you can know what's going to happen to you in the future, right?
Yeah.
For instance, like I'm not a religious person, but when I was, there was one of my favorite sayings. I still think it's one of my favorites. Was that that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Right? I love that because it's so true. There's never been a moment in my life that I predicted it accurately. You know?
Yes.
Like I think about it. Like when I was a kid, when I was like 16, I thought I was going to be a musician and I was going to like play in like epic concerts and stuff like that. If I would have went back in time, like 33-year-old Anthony Jones goes back in time and talked to 16-year-old Anthony Jones. You know, the first question I'm sure the first 16-year-old Anthony Jones is like, "What? You're already bald?" So yes, don't worry about that. You'll get over it. You have a lot of self-confidence. You'll get over it. There's gonna be some days you're gonna be upset about it, but overall you're gonna be fine. So don't worry, you're good. But the idea that you're gonna be a musician, dude, not gonna happen. You're gonna be this artist. You're gonna inspire many other artists to become concept artists. You're gonna work for Blizzard, making artwork for StarCraft. It's gonna be great. I'll be what? Draw? Like I don't draw. I just draw like Dragon Ball Z characters. I'm not an artist. He's like, yeah, I know. You think that now, but don't worry. And then you're gonna start learning programming too. my baby version of myself would just be completely like dumbfounded and wouldn't believe it. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about that every day, like the same thing about like, well, what if the 43 or 53-year-old version of myself came to me and talked to me today? What would he have to say? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so, he might come to me. He's like a robot, like half robot. It's like, AJ, Amazon is Skynet. Like, you must kill Amazon. You were the only hope for mankind. You ended up coding a game that infiltrated their. Yeah, that'd be really scary. So Donald Trump is our savior. He found this out early. He trolled to get into the election because he knew what was happening. What the?
Like, get out of here.
Yeah, I was like, that is crazy. There's no way that's possible. But see, that's the point. That's kind of like how I'd feel. Like
Yeah.
if I went back and talked to the 16-year-old version. Okay. And so you have to understand that and you have to respect that. So control what you can control, right? You can't control any of these other variables, right? Like, like we were talking about the political stuff earlier, like discrimination. Like you can't control that, man. You can't control like big companies being fucking assholes and stuff,
Yeah.
Like you just can't control that. And it sucks. But luckily, we are moving forward. At least I hope we are. and things are getting better. The silver lining with this whole Trump election, for instance, is that people are actually starting to like wake up a little bit, becoming woke bay. I think it was like a hashtag. Like it's funny because I could care less about politics before he was elected, and then as soon as his travel ban went into effect, I was like, oh, he can do shit. I thought the president was just like a glorified like DMV person. But like no, apparently they can do some crazy shit. And then I started learning that they can actually like send nukes, like without context, like without conflict. And I was like, what? How is this? How do we? What? And so yeah, I've gotten obviously more political. So again, that would be another thing that I would tell my 16-year-old version of myself. Oh, you're gonna get real political, bro. What? I don't give a fuck about politics, dude. Government is a lie. Everything's a lie. It's conspiracy. Everything's conspiracy. Flat Earth, bro. All right. I know you think that now. I didn't think that before. I'm just kidding. I was just trying to say, I was trying to give an example of how stupid I might have been. how stupid I might have been when I was 16, because we were all pretty stupid when we were 16, right? And
Yeah.
so that's kind of my point. Okay, so hopefully you can see that this insight is to help guide you to think differently about your own progression, right? It is important to hear other people's stories because it is motivating and it's inspiring, and that's all it should be. Okay, it should motivate you, it should inspire you, it should remind you that everybody has their trials and tribulations, you know. But that's it. It should never be something that you compare, okay, or at least subconsciously compare, okay,
Okay.
because that's destructive. That's distracting. You know, self-criticism is fine. Self-deprecation is poison. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like you did something really good that I'm very proud to hear. That you said that when you went in there, you were overwhelmed with the excellence of others. Right. So that was a clue to me that maybe that this is something that's underlying problem of yours. Right. That you use the imposter syndrome too much, and that's not very good. Okay. And you might never get rid of that. You know, most artists don't. You know, most artists do feel the way that you do. Like they feel like everyone's just always so much better than them. Like I don't have that problem, for instance, right? Like I always think I'm dope until someone says that I'm not, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. And that's very unique trait, like to be kind of arrogant about your own progress and work, but then at the same time be humble enough to recognize that it's arrogance and that you're not as good as you thought you were. You know. But that confidence is really good for progression because I always feel like I'm moving forward. I never look back kind of attitude. Does that make sense? Right. But I'm lucky that I had enough life experiences to tell me that I'm not, my shit doesn't smell like roses. You know, I know that it's quite possible that I'm not as good as I may claim. And if people present to me that that's true, then I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, good job. You got me, you know?
Yeah.
And that's, I contribute that kind of contrast of personality types is why I probably learn so fast, because I'm super confident about my progression, but then also I'm allowing people to tell me why I suck, right?
Yeah.
But there's people out there that are really good, but they have no confidence, and sometimes they just don't paint anymore. I've met people like that. They stop and they get really depressed, and I'm like, what, dude? Like, look at your work, bro. It's amazing, you know. And I met people.
I mean, that was like this. That's part of the reason why I took your class, because, you know, the school I went to the Academy of Art University, and
Oh, yeah, great.
I did that online. And so in online there, even though like they tried to get us to interact with each other, it just didn't really happen all that much. So I didn't
That's
really have,
unfortunate.
I didn't really have a sense of community. And so
Yeah,
a
that
long
sucks.
time I haven't really known where I stood and had like art friends or anything like that. So, you know, I took your class so you could see what I do and what I have done and what I can do and what I'm capable of, and to give me like just to help me see where I am.
Yeah,
So,
and I tell you right now, if to answer that question specifically, you got to increase that clarity, man. That's the first step. Okay.
okay.
And then in terms of the community stuff, hey, you're part of this group now.
Yeah.
The Skype group will be here forever. I invited you guys to the Discord. There's a great community of people there. You know.
Yeah.
You don't have to actively engage with people in a physical capacity to network, right? You can just talk to them digitally. There are many people that I talked to and networked with just digitally alone. I never met them until I went to like IFCC, you know,
Yeah.
or to any other event. I'm like, hey, I know you. We talk all the time online. Now let's talk more. You know what I mean? And so I think that's important too. So you're right. You're right to suspect that you need to broaden your horizon a bit. And I'm glad you're taking the class. And hopefully the insight I gave you was helpful.
It was.
Okay, great. Yeah, like I said, just focus on quality of your work and networking. And to give you some tools to networking, like I said, go on Facebook groups, talk to people on like the Discords, join other Discords. There's plenty of other ones out there, you know, just like engage. Like you don't have to, like I said, go in person. Like the tech revolution is here. You know, we have way better ways to communicate to one another. Right. So use these tools.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions? I'll take a few more. I got to get going pretty soon. I think some of you guys need to as well.
This is not a question about any technical stuff. It's mostly,
Okay.
I'm going to be on a flight to Singapore during next Tuesday session, but I should arrive by the Wednesday one. Can I just join for that one meeting?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I'll just send you the link personally on Skype. Just be on Skype around that time. And make sure to message me too. I might forget.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Yeah, message me on Facebook or on Discord, all over the place, and make sure that I know that you need to join the class on Wednesday.
All right, cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions?
I have a technical question.
Yeah, go for it.
So I noticed in a lot of your videos, you talk about lighting like your characters with a kind of non-directional light.
Uh-huh.
I'm still not 100% sure how it works, so I always end up like designing with a light source because like it's the only way I know how to cast it.
Sure. So when people design or paint a thing, they focus on the lighting a lot. And when they focus on the lighting and they feel like their painting isn't good still, like they feel like something's wrong with their painting, and they really can't put their finger down on it, right? Like even if the lighting seems mostly accurate and they feel like they've lit the forms mostly accurate, and there's still something wrong about their drawing. And overall, the root of that problem is because of the shape. The shapes that dictate the forms, the design, the details. If those aren't accurate or have some sense of control, then you're running around rendering something that doesn't actually work. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I paint, I kind of do both at the same time, you know, like I kind of light a little bit and then I also focus on shape. But if you watch me paint, like truly watch, you see that there is some, you know, some opacity, but it's not because I'm trying to capture lighting or anything. It's just a way to kind of imply some texture and maybe some sense of lighting, but it's not end all be all. If you truly look, I focus on capturing good shapes.
Are you thinking like 2D shape or 3D shape?
Shapes. Because the shape, if it's supposed to be a 3D shape, then I'll make it a 3D shape. If it's supposed to be a 2D shape, then I'll make it a 2D shape. And in most cases, it's always defining some sort of form. You understand? And so if you look, there's no real lighting. Yeah, do you agree? Like it's just kind of
right now, no. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it's kind of ambiguous. And this is what I'm trying to say. Like I'm focused on shape, making the shapes look accurate. So here's a really good example right here, like this little like head guard that I just drew. Like pay attention to what the shape is doing. What is the shape telling us?
it's wrapping around the head.
Yeah, but how did you know that? I didn't put any lighting on it.
Oh, because it's curved.
Yeah, and that's a shape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's using a line, but the line is in itself a shape. Okay, like and it's the length and the width of it too, right? Like it's not uniformly thick.
Mm-hmm.
It's thinning as it rounds around. Why? Because perspective. Do you see how this is all coming together, right?
Yep.
And so the more accurate your shapes are, the more convincing your painting actually is versus having really amazingly lit concept. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you have a more convincing drawing just from the level of the shape, then when you add in lighting, you only compound the believability. Does that make
Right.
sense? You're amplifying it. You're not like if I started to wait, say it again, Cedar. What? Yeah, I put my smoothie on the little diaper desk. My wife was like, "Stop putting stuff on my desk." So now I'm like going in here and like lighting the forms, let's say. Right? But they were already there and they were already placed accurately.
Right.
You know?
That's really weird, actually, now that I notice it. Like,
Yeah, like and it's almost seems effortless now, doesn't it? And it's
yeah.
because I focus a lot of my attention and a lot of my effort on shapes versus lighting.
This guy's lit though, right? He's got a little bit of like.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, like I can do both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But the foundation of why my drawings are mostly successful is because of the shapes, not because of the lighting.
Mm-hmm.
Because then we can get real meta. What are the shapes of the light?
Oh, the shapes. Oh, like the material. Like,
No, the shapes of the lighting, like the light shapes versus the dark shapes, like the shadow versus the light.
Oh well. Yeah.
Right, like this shape right here.
Whoa.
You see what I'm saying? That makes
Yeah, that is complicated.
yeah. So that's why whenever I had a friend who was like, he's like, if you could give me one advice, right? One advice that would
Yep.
make me the best painter I could possibly be, which is always like a really loaded question. Obviously, it takes a lot of variables. But he's like, what one thing? What should I focus a lot of my attention on? And I said, shapes. And he was like, I don't believe you. He genuinely was like, nah, man, there must be more. He was super distracted and delusional. And I was like, dude, you're asking me, and I'm telling you, just because you don't want to believe that it's so simple, it's not my fault, you know? And then like 2 years go by, and then we had like I think we were at dinner one time and we were hanging out, and then he's like, "Yeah, I've been painting again, right? I've been practicing for like a year, and you know what? It's about the shapes." I was like, "Yeah, dude, welcome to the club, man."
So, some of these like shadow forms that might look kind of like strokes or like kind of happy accidents. Do you actually think about them a lot before you
Oh
put them
no,
down?
I'm not thinking about anything. I just
Okay.
do it. Same thing like when you run and then you trip and you catch yourself before you fall to the face forward into the
Yeah.
ground. Like, do you think about the trajectory and like where you should plant your foot and where your hand should be and how you should balance your back leg and your torso and your center of gravity so that way you don't face plant the ground?
Totally. I think
No,
about all that.
oh, you do? Oh, okay, damn, that's tight. No, of course you don't, right? Like you just stop and you catch yourself before you completely kill yourself, right? At least
Yeah.
in most cases. In some cases, I'm sure you might not, you know. But do you kind of see the kind of the point here? And I again recently had a conversation with somebody about this too. I like to have lots of conversations with people. It's how you learn. And so, and we were talking about creativity, and I brought up the point that I think creativity is like even creativity. I think almost all things can just be chopped down to just constant variables, or like an array of variables that have been collected over time, and then your brain just uses those variables subconsciously to do the things that your conscious brain wants it to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and sometimes your subconscious brain will do it for you, even if your conscious brain is not aware. So, for instance, I've been painting and designing these types of creatures and monsters for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my subconscious brain is so trained at drawing this type of stuff. I genuinely am not thinking, okay? Because I've done it so much. My subconscious brain, this is like it's bread and butter. Now, if you asked me to, that's why I can talk. That's why I can talk and paint at the same time and come up with something reasonable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And plus, that's something I do a lot too. I've trained that too, talking and drawing. But getting to the point, you know, like everything could be chopped up into those things. So if I was to basically be told to draw something that I have never drawn before, something that's challenging, I have to put a little more thought into it, and I have to like study more and I have to practice more. These things are true, right? But since I have a strong foundation overall on stuff like anatomy, lighting, whatever, right? It's easier to use reference. It's easier to adapt, right? Because I have a lot of other variables already taken care of. So that's why I always tell people to work on their anatomy, their forms, their perspective, their lighting, because it broadens your abilities. So that way it frees up room in your brain to focus on the larger tasks. Does that help?
It definitely helps.
Okay, cool.
How would you go about like getting really good at shapes? Like just foundations or?
All right, so that's like, now you're asking the wrong question.
Okay.
Again, like Jocelyn. So what do you think? Let me give you a chance.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Consistent practice.
Yes, man. Yeah, right. Like that's not the right question. It's a distraction. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think that I may have done differently that's unique? Nobody else could have ever. Like, no, nothing. But you know, there's definitely things that you can do, right? But it won't make you better overnight. It still takes a lot of time. Okay, like there's
Right.
no. It's not the right question to be asking because it's a distraction. It's like, it's to presume that as soon as you do the exercises that I suggest to you, you're going to all of a sudden become amazing at shapes in a reasonable amount of time. And I can't promise that, dude. I just can't. And so here's the way that I see it whenever someone asks that particular question, right? Like a kind of a tools-oriented, skill-oriented question, okay? Because you asked a really good question before, you know? You said, why do I choose to paint without lighting? That's a very specific, very poignant question, right? And I gave you a very specific and poignant answer that you understood and you can go with. It doesn't promise that you're going to be amazing overnight. You understand that takes effort, but then your brain was like, oh my God, that might take some effort. So then I'm going to ask AJ, hey, what do you do to practice? Do you see what happened there?
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, okay. So, so let me explain the way that I see it visually, okay? And then this will make a lot of sense to all of you guys. So imagine that this is you and then this is me. And you said to me, hey man, like in this little realm, like I see that you do a thing and it's really interesting. So can you tell me what are the reasons why you do it? And I said, oh yeah, sure. Here's some things why I do this. Great. And then the next question is like, okay, but how do I get there, dude? And I'm like, are you serious? So yeah, like what door do I go through, man? So there's like 2 or 3 doors, let's say. And I say, I don't know, man, just pick one. And you're like, well, which one would you go through? I was like, just do me a favor and just pick one first. And you're like, well, what if I go down the wrong path? Just trust me on this. Just pick one, okay? Because this is how it works. You say, well, okay, I'm gonna go down this path. So you go down this path, and as you're going, you're like, see, AJ, look, I'm going down this path, and it's like leading me astray. Like, what's going on, man? And I'm like, no, man, just like try a different path then. You're like, okay, cool. So you try this path, and then you'll notice that this path leads to this one. You're like, see, this is the way that I should have went. Because look, this is leading me closer to that. And I'm like, keep going, bro. Just keep going. And then as you keep going, you realize it actually takes you back over here, you know? And you're like, oh, well, then there must be this one. And you realize this one goes off in a whole different direction. That's off the mark. So maybe the first one was the right one. So you go back, you go, okay, let me try this one again. And sure enough, it does ravine back, but then it goes down. And you're just like, oh, see, I should have just went through there. And I'm like, I know, right? And then so forth and so on. And it becomes this web of knowledge, right? That goes all in different directions in all different ways. And then you might even end up coming from up and above. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is why it's hard for me to just say, just do this, because I don't know where you're at, like literally, you know? Because I might say, hey, just do this most basic thing, but you actually might be over here. So as you're doing this basic thing and you don't feel any real results coming, you might challenge my teachings, you know? And so then, you know, I have to resort to the most practical advice, which is practice just observing shapes and practicing. You know what I'm saying? And that's very obvious. Like you didn't need me to give that answer to you. You would have already came to that conclusion organically, right? But then as you're doing that, as you're practicing your shapes and you're learning how to design shapes, I promise you, your questions are going to be more specific. Meaning that like when you're here at this crossroad, you're going to be like, hey, I tried the left and I tried the right. Like, and I feel like there's no end. whatever that question means. That's not the exact framing of the question, I'm sure it will be. But you see what I'm saying? I'm like, oh yeah, I've been there. Let me tell you what I did. And then you'll get a much more focused answer. Let me think of a good question that I've heard that was like that. I mean, you just asked one like prior. That was a good one.
Yeah.
But let me think of like one that pertains to like getting to good at shapes that someone asked. Oh yeah, like something like, what's the difference between dynamic and organic shapes? Like, see, that's a specific question. That means you've tried either or. You're already practicing it. You're just trying to figure out why they're different and how they're different and what you can learn from that, right? Because then if I were just to say, just practice organic and hard shapes and figure it out on your own, then I'll be an asshole, right? No, I actually have a good answer to that. I'll give you that answer. You understand? And so it's not that I'm always just saying just practice. You guys got to do some of the work first before I can start answering some of these good questions, And so that's why I say it's the wrong question to ask, because you have to first try to suck at shapes. So then you have contextual questions that relate to you and Lo. Does it make sense?
I guess I don't know enough about shapes to ask a.
Yeah, you just need to start. Like, here's a great question I'm going to ask you, and that will probably reveal this. How many times have you practiced just shapes?
It's been a long time. I've done it like a few times, but.
Okay, so a few times.
Yeah.
So does that warrant you to be an expert?
Nope.
Of course not, right? Do you see? So case and point. Case closed. Like you haven't done it enough. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And I reveal to you with your own evidence. I use your own experiences against you, which is lack of experience. And it's always almost ultimately true for whomever I talk to. Whenever they tell me, like this is universally always happens, they tell me that they're really bad at something, and I say, how much have you done it? And they say, barely ever. I'm like, that's why you're bad at it. Try a little bit harder. Do a little bit more. You see
so
what I'm saying?
I should like research shapes and practice different movements.
Absolutely. Because
Okay.
one door is maybe research shapes, another door is just practice randomly, another door is this. I don't know, man. Some people everyone's at different levels. That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay. So you might subconsciously already be somewhere ahead. Do you understand? Just because you may have not been actively paying attention, but your subconscious has been. So you might be somewhere else in terms of the stem of how to learn how to be better at shapes. Do you get that?
All right. Interesting.
Yeah, because some people might literally be on the very bottom, like they don't know shapes at all, right? So then I can give them more specific and strict advice on that. And some people could be super advanced artists, like you look at their work, they're really good, but they still feel like they themselves don't feel like they have control over it, And I tell them, well, then just practice shapes and shapes alone and see what happens and see if you can replicate that result. And then they come to me with really good questions. And you guys will. Towards the end of the class, you'll see. You guys will start asking really great questions. Okay?
All right.
I mean, not to say you guys haven't already. You guys asked great questions already. There's a lot of good ones. And even the ones where I said that's not the right question, those are good questions. Because it leads me to give you advice and insight that will hopefully understand why those questions are misleading to you, not to me. Whatever answer I give to you, I'm sure you would have enjoyed it. But I would be doing you a disservice if I just didn't also include a disclaimer saying it might take you 2 or 3 years to master this. So it's not honest of me to just say, yeah, just do this, man. You'll get shapes all right away. It's not true. It just takes time, man. I think that anything and everything can be definitely perfected in a shorter amount of time than it took me. I think it took me like 5 or 6 years to really get really good. I think for you guys, maybe 2 to 3 years. And this is specifically because there's more access. That's all. Like I sent a picture yesterday of like a Gnomon DVD that I had as evidence. And I didn't show the inside. So this is just for you guys and you guys alone. But it's from my school. I stole it because I couldn't afford that shit. And so, and that trickled down over the years to thinking, man, I want to make my videos only for $4 and stuff like that because I couldn't afford Gnomon DVDs. I want to be a person that helps the masses, and then also try to build some sustainable business. And it worked. It worked out. and people get cheap videos, and then I make a living doing it, right?
Yep.
So hopefully that gives you some insight. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some people posted their portfolios in Skype. Oh, cool. We did a little thing, a little of this in the Skype group, but my Insta is Harding Juice. Okay. You guys are sharing your stuff. Yeah, nice. Good job. One last question, guys. I'm only going to take one more. If you got one, please ask. Yeah, now people are like, oh, I don't want to ask the wrong question anymore. Feel free to ask any kind of question. There's no, you'll notice that I didn't think you guys' questions were stupid or bad. I just think you're not thinking about it right. Let me just reframe your thought process. So if you want to ask those types of questions so I can reframe your thought process, because there's different reasons why people ask different types of questions. And so just don't be afraid to ask questions at all. I don't want that to happen. What exercise do you recommend for practicing shape, since we were talking about it? Yeah, like I said, I usually recommend just getting started. But if I had to give you an answer, right, if I had to give you guys one like answer to get started, just to like, if you were bare bones, like nothing, know nothing about art, the best thing to do is practice shapes in relationship with one another. Like try to just do like 3 triangles and try to make it look good or interesting. And that's a good practice. Another like basic bare bones practice is like practicing drawing straight lines, practicing drawing circles, ellipses. In fact, the club that I got going, I started building something called roadmaps, and these roadmaps are specifically like, I'm going to build them over time, but the idea is that you start one and it just leads you to the next and the next, and then eventually leads you to a path where you do a lot of drawing and practices and exercises that will focus in on where you think you are. You pick one. Like I even put a disclaimer, like it's hard to determine like where your status of skill is at. So try one of these roadmaps for like a week, and if you feel like it's really easy, then move on to the next one, and just keep doing that until you get to one that's actually challenging, and then stay with that one for like months or so. But see, that's kind of to the point I was making earlier, right? Was that it's hard for me to just say, yeah, just do this and you'll just be amazing at shapes. You got to just kind of know where you stand, and the best way to find out is to just straight up to start practicing it. Like try something, try anything, and try to find a way to gauge that. Okay, and as soon as you do, then that's when you'll start to ask some really interesting, really great questions, not only to yourself but to potential other artists that you admire or appreciate. Yeah. I'll take one more question. I think that because that question was leading off of the last one, and I realized I didn't actually give some advice on that, so that's good kind of to talk to me about that. But overall, when it comes to practice, guys, it's just a matter of just doing it, and then once you do it, what happens is, like I said, it forces you to ask new and interesting questions, and not only about, like I said, not only of yourself, but like whenever you talk to anyone else. It just forces that new dialogue to happen. And when you stop asking questions, you pretty much accepted that you don't want to grow anymore. I'm with a 4-legged client. Can't talk, but I'm listening like a podcast. What? Are you a dog trainer? Oh, dog walker. Oh, see, I was close. It's like kind of like a riddle that Danny had. It seemed like a riddle, right? He's like, I'm with a 4-legged client. Who is my client? Any other questions? Oh.
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Dang, it's super loud.
Oh my God.
There you
Now,
go. It's a little
okay.
better. Go ahead.
Okay. I think I'm in the street. I just have like a, short question because, how do you have any kind of physical exercise in order to keep your arms, wrists, and tendons in shape. Because, for me, I have a tendinitis, and right now my wrist and my arms are killing me.
Yeah, tendinitis, right?
Yeah.
Tendinitis causes. It can also be treated as caused by sudden injury. In the majority of cases, tendinitis develops in people whose jobs or hobbies involve repetitive, aggravated tendons. A tear in the tendon caused by injury may cause swelling. Well, there's two: tendinosis, tendinosis,
I don't know.
tendinitis.
I'm still working on my English.
No, I think I know which one you're talking about. Okay, so I will say this: I don't have any exercises, okay, that I do specifically for this, okay. But I used to have carpal tunnel pretty badly, and what would happen is that, oh Jesus.
Sorry, I'm in the mood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you just mute yourself so that way you can just a walkie-talkie style.
Yeah, let me mute and I will listen to you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah. And you can respond back. Just do like a walkie-talkie style. Like you just unmute yourself, say something, and then mute yourself. So I want to stop the painting right here too. When I was dealing with carpal tunnel, what would end up happening is that like I would paint for a little bit, and then my arm would get severely numb, and then I would have to like put my arm upwards, like it would be like pins and needles. It would hurt and be numb. So I would put my hand above my head for about like 5 to 10 minutes, and then it was annoying. I did this really like every like 15, 20 minutes too. It was often, and so then when I would do this, I would end up, delaying my work a lot. And I didn't know how to fix this. So I did stretches, I did exercises in the past. I just didn't know what to do. But, I just eventually just kind of accepted it. But one day it all went away. Or at least maybe not in one day, but just over time it went away. And what I found was that because I switched my diet, I went to a vegan diet, that inflammation in my whole body overall just went down. That's what happens when you start to remove inflammatory foods, right? And a lot of what I was eating was inflammatory. And so, it went away. Like, so I don't have it anymore. It's completely gone. And so I always tell people, because I don't want to kind of be that guy that's like, everybody should be vegan, which I do encourage, but I try to encourage people to just try to avoid foods that cause inflammation. Okay. And try to eat less and less. And it's been proven scientifically that high cholesterol and high saturated fat, specifically those two, cause inflammation. So if you reduce those two things in your diet, inflammation goes down dramatically. And here's the scary thing about carpal tunnel or any other kind of disease that may cause because of like some sort of clogging of your arteries or clogging of your vessels, is that those lead to heart attacks. So not only did I potentially get rid of my carpal tunnel, I might reduce my chances of a heart attack. I can still have a heart attack. It just reduces it dramatically. Like erectile dysfunction is also another symptom that could lead to heart failure, and any other kind of thing that may cause your limbs to go numb and cause pain. So from what I'd read, it said that it causes inflammation. It's the heat of it, like you're consistently bringing more and more friction against your tendons. So that to me means that you want to reduce your inflammation, but also it seems like to me you want to reduce the amount of friction that you're applying on one area for long periods of time. So it seems very sensible to me that every 30 minutes you should take a pretty good break, because stretching your wrists and stuff seems like you're only causing more friction, right? Intuitively, it seems like you're like releasing something, but from what I read, it says like it's like a constant increase of heat and inflammation. So which means like if you just keep rubbing a thing, like, and then you're stretching it, it's still rubbing that thing. So it might be best to just kind of relax and don't do anything, right? Just let it kind of cool off and see if that works. and that's just me like looking and reading and kind of making my own assumptions. I'm not obviously not a physician, so you know, take that with a grain of salt. But I use my anecdotal story, but also evidence found in scientific research about inflammation in general, to see if that will help you out as well. All right. So if that helps, great. If it doesn't, talk to your doctor, man. That's what doctors are for. And if your doctor doesn't give you a solution, talk to another doctor. Keep talking to doctors until one doctor solves your problem. And if you're in a country where medical care is very affordable, then there's no reason why you shouldn't go often. Okay? Anyways, I'm gonna go now. Hope you guys had a good class. It was great talking to you guys. Everybody submitted amazing work. I really appreciate you guys' effort. With that being said, you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you very soon. Laters. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you liked the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.